before we start coding our JetTip app, that's what I've decided to name it, let's look at the structure of this application. So it's always a good idea to look at the overall structure that we are going to implement, okay? Because it will give us an idea or a map on how to navigate all the components, all of the functions, in this case composable functions, that we need to put together in order to have a full app. So if you look at this app here, this is the screenshot of the app that we're going to be building. You notice that we have at the top a few sections, right? So we have the top section. This is where we're going to calculate the total per person. So the overall calculation of how much money each person will have to pay, or just a person if there's only one person paying the bill. Okay, and then we have an overall bottom area. This actually includes a lot of things, includes of other pieces of user interface. Mainly we have here a text field, so users are going to be able to enter something, right? In this case, enter a bill. And then at the bottom we have this split section, which contains a button, actually two buttons. One is to add more people, so how many ways we are going to split this by, and the other one is to reduce or decrement the amount of people. And then we have this other area, which is the total tip. This is where we're going to display the total amount of the tip. Okay, and then we have the tip percentage area. This is connected to the tip slider. So as we slide left and right, the tip percentage area is going to change accordingly. So these are the moving parts, as I like to call them, as we build this app. Again, thinking in those terms, it will always help you because you will know what pieces that need to be built and then assemble all together so we have a full application. All right, so let's go ahead and get going. So I went ahead and created a new project. As you can see here, I named it JetTip app. Go ahead and do that yourself. You should be able to do that. All right, so nothing really new here. What we have is the greeting Android app. We've seen before. We can go to split mode here. I'm going to close this down and you should see the same thing we've seen before, which is just a representation, which will just said hello Android. Okay, so while that loads, we can just go ahead and start thinking about what we want to do. So we are going to start with putting together this top part here, which is the total per person. Let's start thinking about how do we put this structure together. You can see it should be some sort of a card which will have rounded corners. Right. So we can start thinking about, okay, what structure we need. Now we can use a surface, we can use a card, we can use whatever we want. And remember, we can always use modifiers to modify the way this function behaves. In this case, the way this card will look like. Okay, so that's good. At least we start thinking about things. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how can we put a structure like this. Now, the other thing you will notice is that because we are putting pieces together, UI pieces together, we don't necessarily need to run on an emulator. This is why we have the preview. Okay, that's why we have it and that's why we use it. So what we can do, we can leverage that, because sometimes having to run each time on the emulator can take a lot of time, and also we just want to create these pieces and then put them together in a bigger container, which is going to be our main user interface, the whole screen. Okay, so whichever you prefer, you can do it, but I like this way. Okay, so this seems to have worked. All right, this is just what comes with this project, a boilerplate. What we're going to do here, as you know, we're going to just get rid of all of these because we don't need them. I'm going to get rid of the call there, and of course get rid of that. Okay, so there it is. So the next concept here, we said we want to put together this structure here, but let's go ahead and structure the app per se. There are different ways to structure an app, but I'm going to show you one that's very helpful. You see here that we have set content. In fact, this is a lambda, trailing lambda, which means we can pass yet another composable, in this case JetTip app theme, which was created by Android Studio, right? And then we pass our surface, our famous surface, and we pass a background color. So what we can do, we can extract everything inside of set content somewhere else, and then call that function, that composable function inside here. This will just decouple even further the pieces that we want to put together in our app. So there's this concept called container functions in Compose. So this again makes things a little bit more flexible and easier to deal with each composable. How does that work? Well, let's hover over the JetTip app. If you hover over like this, this is an example of a container function because it gives it this flexibility. You can see it is a composable function that we can pass another composable function as a parameter. And if you hover over again, you can see because this content here, it is indeed a function called inside of this function, and it expects a composable, which is exactly what we want to do. That's a container function, expects a composable, because it's the last parameter that is passed inside of a function. That means then we can use a lambda, trailing lambda as such. So this is the concept we're going to do. So here I'm going to say something like this: at composable such, and then I'm going to say function. I'm going to call this my app. So this is the entry point, my app, and then I'm going to do the same thing as we have seen. If you have over, call this content and pass the composable function. Now you can name it whatever you want, of course, but content seems to make more sense. And then I'm going to say at composable like this. This tells the compiler that this expects a composable function, and this composable function is going to return unit, which means really nothing. And there we go. Take all of this and put inside here, okay? And I can say something like text, just so you see, hello again. All right, so now I can call this my component, or my app rather. I can say my app like this, and here I can pass whatever I want. In fact, I can just remove all of this and just pass here text hello again, and voila. You can see it follows the same convention as all of these other container functions. Okay. So content here is whatever we're going to pass inside here, which means we're just passing a text that says hello again. Okay, if I refresh this, actually, I will have to call at the bottom here, my app, and pass a text that says, hello again. Okay. All right, let's refresh because we didn't have my app in our default preview. So now I can take all of this, even the JetTip app theme, which in return it's also a container function. I can just cut all of this and put inside here. And now what I'm going to do inside of our content here, because we know it's a composable, that it's expected, I'm just going to say content as such, call our content like this. Now inside of a set content, all I have to do is say my app and pass, for instance, I want text to be our content. I'm going to say hello again as such. Of course, this is not going to work because inside of our Jet app theme here, I need to go ahead and call my content, or my app, I should say, and pass text that says hello again. Okay, let's go ahead and refresh real quick. And you can see it says hello again. So nothing really crazy that's happening here. It's just that we're restructuring everything. Now you can see it's really easy because everything we want to pass in the content here as a composable, we can just put inside of my app. We can put whatever we want. In fact, you can put as many functions, call as many composable functions as you want inside here. It makes things much, much easier because all you will see in our set content is going to be my app only and whatever we're calling here. It's way better than cramming everything together inside here. Okay, so this is just something to keep in mind, and I would really suggest you think in those terms. Pass, in this case, a container function, which allows you to pass another composable. Okay, and then of course call the contents, because this is what's been called or what's been passed inside of my app, in this case inside of the trailing lambda. Right, so let's get rid of all of this. In fact, we could keep it there for now. And this set content is fine. Okay, now let's start working on this structure. All right, so at the bottom here, I can start structuring a few things. Let me call this top entity here. I'm going to start with that, composable as such, going to be a function. Let's call this top header as such. Okay, and we are composing things right now, so I'm going to pass a preview real quick so we can look at it and see. You can see it's starting to show there, but there's nothing in there, so there's really not much to do or to see. Okay, so let's create then this card-like structure. Again, what we need to do, we could use card, but I'm going to go straight with a surface. I'm going to say surface. There we go. And inside of this surface here, this is where we're going to add all of the contents that we see there. Now we can see that we should have another structure, right? Because all of these items, so total per person text and this number text there that shows the amount of total amount that is, they are laid out vertically, which means one after the other. So what structure or what layout should we use in turn? What layout should we use inside here? Right, column. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a column real quick here and work from there. So column, like this. Very good. So inside of our surface, of course, notice sometimes Android Studio may give us the entire path, right? We can just delete that. That's not needed. Surface, that's fine. And so here we're going to first pass a modifier. I'm going to say modifier, our good friend. And I'm going to say dot. We can put in a new line. I'm going to say fill max width, right? Because I want to make sure this takes the entire space. And then I'm going to say dot fill max width as such. I'm going to say dot fill max width as such. I'm going to continue. Looks like something is not right. Let's go back. Sometimes the imports are not correct. Let's get rid of that import. Let's get rid of this import and see if we can re-import a few things. Okay, this modifier here. Now let's go ahead, Alt Option, and let's get the modifier, compose modifier. This is very important. Good lesson. Sometimes when you see that the red lines or red functions being called, that means we are getting or we have imported that modifier in that class from a different package, right? So we want the modifier interface from Android X.compose.ui. Okay, hit that, and you can see now we have to also import that fill max width. All right, there we go. So back in business here. Okay, so next we are going to give it a height of this structure, and I want to say 150.dp, and we need to import dp, right? And with our modifier, we can continue, because remember, we want to make sure that this structure has this rounded, as you see here, rounded corners. Well, we can continue. I can say dot again. This is still invoking modifier functions. I'm going to say clip. Clip allows us, as the name implies, to clip into a certain shape. If you hover over, says shape content would be clipped to this shape. I'm going to pass a shape. What shape do we want? I'm going to say shape as such, and I'm going to say I want a circle. Now I have a few options here. I can say rounded corner shape like this, and inside here I'm going to pass the corner size. So it's going to be a corner size object function we're going to pass, I should say. And then here we can pass, let's say I want this to be about 12.dp around the entire shape. What this does, well, actually, let's go ahead and refresh this real quick to see what will happen. And all right, there we go. You can see we have the shape we want. It looks very similar to this. Of course, the color is different, but at least we accomplished what we wanted, right? And I'd said that there are different ways to do this. I'll show you another way, okay? This is the beauty of Compose, is that it gives us these many possibilities of doing the same thing. So I'm going to say clip again. And for shape here, I can say something like this. I can say circle shape, and I can say dot copy to say I'm going to further customize this shape. We say dot copy. So essentially we're overriding a few of the circle shape, a few parameters or a few fields of our circle shape here, and I can then specify what is that I want. I can say all to say I want all of the corner sizes to be one size. So then I have to pass a corner size function and then pass, in this case, 12.dp. If you refresh again, you won't see any difference really, because it's going to be all the same. It's just that we use a different way of doing the same thing. You see no change. It's all the same. Let's make this better size, and there you have it. All right, very good. So either way works fine. Sometimes I will use a rounded corner or just circle shape and then pass the copy to say I want to override certain properties of our circle shape. So before you go to the next video, I want you to figure out a way to change this color, this background color of our top header here, so to have some color like this. Okay, something similar at least.